right here. Are you aware of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look.
Oh, yeah. I took a gamble on this art locker. Hopefully, it'll paint a pretty picture. You see this? It's not a quarter. It's a game changer. You win, 600. I win, 700.
The news of Darrell Sheets' death exposed a side of Storage Wars that viewers were never meant to see. For more than a decade, Darrell helped turn the series into one of reality television's biggest success stories. But after his tragic death, the conversation changed far beyond storage lockers and television fame to a tragedy no one expected. As tributes poured in, one familiar voice remained noticeably silent: Jarrod Schulz. Then, after days of speculation, he finally broke his silence. So what did Jarrod have to say? Join us as we uncover what Jarrod Schulz finally revealed about the death of Darrell Sheets. Jarrod finally breaks silence. When news broke that Darrell Sheets had died, the Storage Wars community came to a standstill. Fans who had watched him dominate storage auctions for more than a decade struggled to believe that one of the show's biggest personalities was gone. Before long, tributes began appearing from people who had worked with him for years. His son, Darrell Sheets, shared an emotional message remembering his father. Other familiar faces from the series also expressed their grief and reflected on the impact Darrell had on their lives. One person, however, remained silent: Jarrod Schulz. He did not immediately release a public statement. Considering how many years the two men had spent together on Storage Wars, fans quickly noticed his absence from the growing list of tributes. They had competed against each other countless times, challenged one another during tense auctions, and shared moments that helped shape some of the show's most memorable seasons. While they were rivals on screen, they had also spent years working in the same close-knit television family. As the days passed, viewers began asking the same question: would Jarrod eventually speak, or would he choose to grieve in private? His silence only drew more attention as more cast members shared their memories of Darrell. Every new tribute reminded fans of the friendships built behind the cameras and the years these buyers had spent traveling, filming, and competing together. For many viewers, Jarrod's reaction carried particular weight because he and Darrell had known each other since the early days of the series. Then, Jarrod finally decided to speak. Rather than commenting on rumors or speculation surrounding Darrell's death, he chose to remember the man he had known. It was a simple tribute, but one that resonated with fans who had waited to hear from him. His response also reminded everyone that reality television only shows part of the story. Viewers watched the bidding wars, the rivalries, the jokes, and the celebrations after a profitable locker. What they rarely saw were the friendships that developed once filming stopped, or the personal battles many cast members chose to keep away from the public eye. Darrell Sheets, nicknamed the Gambler, had become one of the faces most closely associated with the series. His fearless bidding, booming personality, and famous wow factor made him one of the show's biggest attractions. That is why his death hit so hard. It was not simply the passing of a television personality. It was the loss of a man who had helped define Storage Wars from the very beginning. Now, Jarrod finally spoke, but his tribute was only one chapter of a much larger story. A story that began with a loss that nobody in the Storage Wars family saw coming. The death that shook Storage Wars. Long before he became known as the Gambler, Darrell Sheets was simply a man with an instinct for taking chances. That instinct eventually made him one of the most recognizable buyers on Storage Wars. When the series premiered in 2010, viewers quickly learned that if Darrell was interested in a locker, things were about to get exciting. He never hesitated to spend thousands of dollars on a unit that everyone else had overlooked. Sometimes he lost big. More often, he walked away with a discovery that justified every dollar he had risked. His confidence became part of the show's identity. Fans looked forward to his bold bids, his personality, and the excitement that followed whenever he uncovered something valuable. His catchphrase, "That's the wow factor," became one of the most recognizable lines in the series. Even buyers competing against him admitted that Darrell had an eye for hidden treasures that few others could match. But once the auctions ended and the cameras stopped rolling, Darrell lived a very different life. Unlike many reality television personalities, he rarely opened the door to his private world. Interviews usually focused on business, auctions, or memorable finds rather than his personal life. He preferred to keep his family and personal struggles out of the public eye. For years, that approach worked. Fans knew the entertainer they watched every week, but very little about the man behind the public image. That changed in 2019. In March of that year, Darrell revealed that he had suffered a serious heart attack while attending a concert. He later explained that doctors also diagnosed him with congestive heart failure and severe lung disease. The news shocked fans because nothing on television had suggested his health was in such a fragile state. His recovery was long and difficult. Darrell credited his fiancée, Romy Snyder, with helping him through one of the hardest periods of his life. As he focused on his health, his appearances on Storage Wars became less frequent. Eventually, he stepped away from the series after season 15, ending a run that had lasted from the very beginning of the show. Although he was no longer bidding every week, fans never forgot him. His greatest locker discoveries continued to circulate online, and his name remained closely connected to the show's success. Whenever longtime viewers talked about the greatest buyers in Storage Wars history, Darrell's name almost always appeared near the top of the list. Then came the news nobody expected. In April 2026, Darrell Sheets died at the age of 67. The announcement spread quickly across entertainment news outlets and social media. Viewers who had followed him for more than 15 years struggled to believe one of the franchise's original stars was gone. As authorities investigated the circumstances surrounding his death, more details became public. Authorities later ruled his death a self-harm. At the same time, investigators confirmed they were examining allegations that he had experienced prolonged cyberbullying before his death. While authorities never concluded that online harassment alone caused his death, they acknowledged that the allegations formed part of the investigation and deserved careful review. That revelation changed how many people viewed the tragedy. Instead of seeing only the confident bidder who entertained millions, people began wondering what life had been like for Darrell after he stepped away from television. Those closest to Darrell later described him as someone who had faced difficult personal challenges away from the public eye. His death also marked another heartbreaking loss for the Storage Wars cast. Over the years, the franchise had already mourned several familiar faces, making Darrell's passing even harder for longtime viewers to process. As condolences continued to pour in, attention gradually shifted from the headlines to the life Darrell had lived. Yet behind every tribute remained the same unanswered thought. How could someone who had spent years entertaining millions have been carrying so much pain without most people ever realizing it? As investigators uncovered more details, grief quickly gave way to confusion. And before long, everyone was asking the same question: what really happened? The questions no one could answer. In the hours after Darrell Sheets was found dead, investigators began piecing together what had happened inside his home. As officers processed the scene, one detail became increasingly important. There were reportedly no signs of forced entry. Although Darrell's body was discovered with a gunshot wound on his head, investigators found no evidence of a struggle with another person or an intruder. So, as the investigation continued, Authorities concluded that Darrell had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and his death was ruled a suicide. For many fans, that conclusion was difficult to accept. Questions began spreading across social media almost immediately. Was something happening behind the scenes that nobody knew about? Had Darrell been struggling for longer than anyone realized? Were there warning signs that had gone unnoticed? Those questions only grew louder as new information started to emerge. According to people close to the situation, Darrell had allegedly been dealing with persistent online harassment for years before his death. Reports claimed that the harassment had become so severe that it affected his peace of mind and left him living with constant stress. His girlfriend also reported that he had been dealing with severe stress, insomnia, and emotional distress in the weeks leading up to his death. Investigators also confirmed they were examining allegations of cyberbullying as part of the case. That announcement immediately shifted public attention. The investigation was no longer focused only on how Darrell died, but also on whether prolonged online abuse had contributed to his emotional state in the months leading up to his death. It was an important distinction. Authorities never stated that cyberbullying alone caused Darrell's death. Instead, they confirmed they were looking into those allegations while continuing to review all available evidence. As the investigation moved forward, reports indicated that detectives recovered information suggesting Darrell had expressed concerns about being harassed online before his death. According to the incident report provided to NBC News on Thursday, police found a note hidden in a bathroom closet next to the room where Sheets was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was written in what appeared to be shaky handwriting and said, "I could not take any more the Facebook bullying." That revelation changed the conversation. Fans who had initially focused only on the circumstances of his death began looking at the pressure that can come with public attention. For years, Darrell had entertained millions of viewers. Like many reality television personalities, he became someone audiences felt they knew personally. But appearing on television does not mean every part of someone's life becomes visible. Cameras capture moments, but they rarely capture private struggles. As more stories surfaced, several people who knew Darrell described a man who had become increasingly troubled in recent years. Those accounts painted a picture that viewers had never seen during episodes of Storage Wars. Behind the jokes, the confident bidding, and the excitement of the auctions, there had been hidden battles taking place. The investigation into the cyberbullying allegations continued, and many hoped it would provide clarity. Whether those responsible would ever be identified remained uncertain, but the allegations themselves sparked a wider conversation about the impact online harassment can have on real people. For Darrell's loved ones, however, the investigation could never undo what had happened. It could not bring back the man who had spent years making audiences laugh with his bold personality and unforgettable one-liners. It could not erase the grief that settled within the series. And it could not answer every question that people continued asking. As the days passed, one thing became impossible to ignore. Darrell Sheets had left behind far more than memorable television moments. He had left behind a conversation about mental health, the damage online harassment can cause, and the reality that even the strongest personalities can be fighting battles that remain invisible to everyone around them. While some questions remained unanswered, those who had laughed with Darrell, worked beside him, and called him a friend couldn't keep one thing to themselves any longer. Cast members who refused to stay silent. As news of Darrell Sheets' death spread, messages of shock quickly turned into heartfelt tributes. For years, millions of viewers had watched the Storage Wars cast compete fiercely for abandoned storage lockers. They argued over bids, celebrated huge fines, and joked with one another on camera. But once the cameras stopped rolling, many of those rivalries gave way to genuine friendships. Darrell's passing reminded everyone that there was far more to these relationships than viewers ever saw on television. The first and most emotional tribute came from his son, Darrell Sheets. Brandon had spent years appearing alongside his father as the side bet, learning the auction business while sharing countless memorable moments on the show. After Darrell's death, Brandon shared a heartfelt message expressing his love for his father and the pain of losing him. He also asked people to remember Darrell for the life he lived, rather than allowing the circumstances of his death to define his legacy. It was a deeply personal farewell from a son who had spent much of his adult life working beside his father. Soon afterward, Dave Hester also spoke publicly. On television, Dave and Darrell were often presented as rivals. They challenged each other at auctions, exchanged sharp remarks, and rarely backed away from competition. That rivalry became one of the show's defining storylines. Off-camera, however, the relationship was much different. Dave explained that while they competed fiercely, they respected one another. He recalled spending time with Darrell outside the show and said they occasionally met for lunch, where conversations had little to do with storage lockers and much more to do with life. Those moments allowed Dave to get to know Darrell as a friend rather than just a competitor. Dave admitted that learning of Darrell's death left him stunned. He said he had not known the extent of what Darrell had been dealing with and wished his friend had reached out if he had been struggling. Reflecting on their final conversations, Dave remembered joking with Darrell about both of them ending up in the hospital after dealing with health problems of their own. Looking back, those light-hearted conversations carried a sadness that neither of them could have anticipated. Another voice that resonated strongly with fans was Renee Njoda. Although Renee and Darrell often found themselves bidding against each other, Renee chose not to focus on competition after the tragedy. Instead, he used his platform to deliver a message directed at viewers. In an emotional statement, Renee reminded people that appearing on television does not make someone immune to pain. He urged fans to think carefully before attacking public figures online, explaining that viewers never truly know what someone may be experiencing away from the cameras. Brandy Passante also honored Darrell's memory. Rather than focusing on his television career alone, Brandy encouraged compassion for anyone facing emotional or mental health challenges. She emphasized the importance of checking on loved ones and speaking openly about mental health, hoping that something positive could emerge from an otherwise heartbreaking loss. The show's longtime auctioneers, Don and Laura Dotson, also addressed the tragedy. Having watched Darrell bid for years, they knew him far beyond the fast-paced auctions viewers saw each week. Laura later revealed that Darrell had spoken about being deeply affected by online harassment. Those comments added another layer to the public conversation. While investigators continued examining the allegations, Laura's remarks reinforced what several others had already suggested. Darrell had been facing challenges that most viewers never knew existed. Despite approaching the tragedy from different perspectives, the cast members shared one common goal. None of them wanted Darrell to be remembered only for the way he died. They wanted people to remember the fearless bidder who could spot value where everyone else saw junk. Whether through Brandon's farewell, Dave's memories, Renee's appeal for compassion, Brandy's call to support those who are struggling, or Laura's account of Darrell's private battles, every tribute pointed toward the same truth. Behind the television character known as the Gambler was a real person whose life touched far more people than viewers could ever fully appreciate. Every tribute revealed a different side of Darrell, but Jarrod's message carried a unique perspective because of the years they spent competing, laughing, and building storage wars together. The words that meant the most. For several days, Jarrod Schulz said nothing publicly, while messages continued to appear from Darrell Sheets' family, friends, and fellow cast members. Jarrod stayed out of the conversation. That silence did not go unnoticed. Considering the years the two men had spent together on Storage Wars, many viewers expected Jarrod to be among the first to respond. Instead, he waited. When he finally addressed Darrell's death, his message was not dramatic or controversial. He simply paid tribute to a man he had known for years. Jarrod's statement centered on remembrance rather than explanation. He expressed sadness over Darrell's passing, extended his condolences to those closest to him, and honored the memories they had shared throughout their time on Storage Wars. His message also arrived at an important moment. By then, public attention had shifted toward the investigation and the allegations of prolonged online harassment. Every day seemed to bring new discussions, new opinions, and fresh speculation. Instead of adding to that noise, Jarrod chose another direction. He brought the focus back to Darrell himself. That decision echoed the approach taken by several other members of the cast. In many ways, Jarrod's tribute reflected the relationship viewers had witnessed over the years. The two men did not always agree. They competed for the same lockers, challenged each other's decisions, and often found themselves chasing the same opportunities. Those rivalries became part of what made Storage Wars enjoyable to watch. For fans who had followed Storage Wars from the beginning, that farewell carried real meaning. Jarrod and Darrell represented an important chapter in the show's history. By the time Jarrod finally delivered his tribute, the headlines had already told the world how Darrell died. His message, however, encouraged people to remember something far more important: how Darrell lived. In the end, Darrell Sheets will be remembered for far more than the way his story ended. His greatest legacy lives in the years of entertainment he gave fans, the unforgettable moments he created on Storage Wars, and the memories shared by the people who knew him best. Do you think there's still more to Darrell's story that the public doesn't know? And if he was dealing with so much behind the scenes, why do you think he didn't ask for help sooner? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.